lately, Microsoft finds themselves in a world of, I think, trouble from a lot of the things that they're doing, a lot of the things that they're saying, a lot of the things they're not even saying, which is a big problem if you actually think about it, because when you're quiet, it speaks volumes, you know? Like if somebody, I understand not having to comment on every single thing that's ever said, right? Because I think that's smart, but I also think that it's a very weird situation that Microsoft finds themselves in, where they have to have all these rumors pop up anyway. And if Microsoft wasn't such an easy target with Xbox and the way they run it, I think that, you know, we wouldn't see half the things that we see, you know. So it is really kind of unfortunate the way that this happens, but you know, Microsoft brings it on themselves. Unfortunately, it's a bad situation. Hopefully they can get something rolling. Hopefully they could do something to maybe bring some class back to the platform, some belief possibly, you know. I don't know. To me, the way that I look at things, they've really done a number on people's faith in the brand. Listen, I love Xbox, but even I am like at this point where I'm like, do I even bother? I'm not hardly buying any games or spending any money on Xbox. I canceled Game Pass. You know, there's just a lot of things that are going on right now that make me not trust them. You know, even the rumors of their next Xbox, unfortunately, don't really thrill me. You know, it sounds like it's going to be a super expensive thing and that they're not even going to really try with it, which would be bad. But this is really bad because you have a co-founder of Xbox really just taking them to task, and I gotta agree with this 100%. It is a bad situation that Microsoft find themselves in, and it's a preventable situation is the main thing that I would kind of talk about, you know. So you know, I want to get into this because it does sound like it's going to be a pretty good video. Former Microsoft executive Laura Fryer has criticized Xbox's leadership for being, quote, out of touch following the company's recent Game Pass and hardware price increases. In a video posted online, Fryer accused senior management of being, quote, stuck in a bubble and disconnected from the values that once made Xbox a fan-favorite brand. Referring to the official announcement video for the Game Pass pricing changes, she said, in fairness, they got that right. They gave their fans the freedom to choose, and they've left. Wow. I mean, what a burn if you think about it, right? This is somebody who helped build up Xbox, and she's like, okay, well, Microsoft has really screwed the pooch here and like done a number on the fans, you know. And I think that is unfortunate, but at the same point in time, when you look at it, you have to be able to say, hey, you know, Microsoft is really bad at keeping their fans happy at this particular point in time. You know, it's like, I know some people try to pretend and put their best face forward, but the problem is that if you don't have, you know, some of these things ready to go where people can just look at it and go, okay, well, that's a good thing, you know, they won't stick around forever, you know. And that's been a big problem for Microsoft, is that they haven't been able to keep people, you know, content in their own ecosystem. And you know, there's always going to be a handful that are maybe like paid or whatever. I'm not going to get into the whole thing with that because I know that people like do talk about that lately, but there's a tremendous amount of people, influencers are just that, right? A lot of people you see on YouTube are influencers. They'll get flown out to play a game, or you know, maybe they've hosted an event, or you know what I'm saying, or they've broke bread with Microsoft at some of these events. You know, I would consider their job is to influence you, right? Like, I'm an Xbox fan. I've never gotten anything from Xbox. You know, I like Xbox. I'll call them out when they do good or when they do bad, and I'll praise them if they do good. But it's like a lot of the people, I would just say be a little bit wary of, because that's a real thing. You know, anybody that's actually goes to their events, or you know, has had dinner with these people or gets things from these people, of course they're going to give some kind of positive slant. That's the entire job of, you know, the whole situation. You know, we'll see how that works out for them, but you know, again, anything can happen. You know, we'll see what's going on. But when we do see stuff like this happen, like Laura says, she says, not one fan asked for game prices to be raised by 50% or for the price of Xbox to go up by 30%. This is tone deaf video and further confirmation that the bubble at Xbox is real, while with leadership that doesn't understand what made them great. Freyer claimed that this cultural shift began in 2008 when she called a yes man culture, a quote-unquote yes man culture, began taking root inside Microsoft. She contrasted today's leadership with Xbox of the early 2000s, a brand that she argued built its identity around bold innovation, late-night multiplayer parties, and a community-driven spirit of Halo 2 and Xbox Live. Now, this is great, right? Because a lot of people go, oh, and I've been accused of this, oh, crap, you hate, women, you don't, you're this, that, you're always against woke and this and that, you know what I mean? Listen, here's the thing, though. There's in the grand scheme of things, there's really hardly anyone that is woke, right? It's just like you have these companies, and especially during a certain era, try to push certain things or whatever, not realizing who their audience is. And with this, she's like, yeah, Xbox, which built its identity around Xbox Live, Halo 2, Halo 3, right? Gears of War, Dude Bros, the shooter box, all that stuff, like they forget all of this, and there's never been a truer statement. And now everything is so like politically correct within Xbox. It's like Xbox has a decree for their own developers: you can't have a woman that's less than her male counterpart in a game. If there's a man and a woman in the same game, the woman has to be just as strong and just as this. She can't be voluptuous or have curves or anything like that. Literally, that is a mandate from Microsoft. That's not me making things up. You can find that online. Like, they have a mandate: no curvy women, no revealing outfits. Look at what they did to Cortana, right? Look at Cortana in Halo 4, right? And then look at Cortana, even though it's not, they rebooted it kind of, and it's not the same Cortana, but look at how she's dressed in Halo Infinite, right? Looks like she's, going to a nunnery or something. It's crazy. Might as well put her in a snowsuit. Jeez. Anyway, she said this is an Xbox that is destroying all of the brand value built over the years. It was meant to be an inclusive message where everyone is welcome, but it ended up hollowing out the brand. Because if everything is an Xbox, then nothing really is. She also criticized the company's lack of first-party blockbusters and an abandonment of core identity in pursuit of trends. The former Microsoft worker said Xbox didn't reinvent itself by replacing the old engine with a better one. They just abandoned what they had and started chasing what they didn't understand. Look, this woman seems very smart. Like, I'd heard of her here and there, but I'd never really heard her speak until more recently. Usually you hear people like Seamus Blackley talk or whatever, but she's very smart with what she's saying here. Microsoft does chase over things they don't understand, and that's unfortunate. She concluded by warning that Game Pass increase undermines Xbox's last major strength. She said, quote, "With this last increase to Game Pass, Xbox threw away one of their last advantages. They were the best deal in gaming. These price hikes feel like a betrayal. Greed over gaming." So she has really kind of laid into Microsoft. I feel like she is 100% correct here, and this is something that doesn't have to do with man versus woman or whatever the case may be. This is just facts versus feelings. And when you kind of look at this and kind of look at how Microsoft has been handling what they've been doing lately, it's unfortunate because Microsoft, all you have to do is look at what Sony is able to accomplish, right? This is their most successful generation ever, despite them only selling so far 80 million consoles, right? That's not like a hugely successful number for Sony. I'm sure that by the time it's all said and done, it'll be over 100 million for the PS5. But when you look at things, like they realize you have to sell a bunch of consoles to sell subscriptions, to sell software, and all that kind of stuff. And what the common Xbox fan would say is, oh, well, yeah, but then everything's an Xbox, so it's different, blah, blah, blah. But that hasn't helped Microsoft catch up with Sony in any ways. Microsoft owns the biggest IPs in gaming right now, and that hasn't helped them catch up with the money Sony makes. And Sony keeps the majority of their games exclusive, because they realize if you sell more consoles, you can sell all the other stuff, right? Microsoft doesn't realize that. They're like, you don't need an Xbox. And how many times have they driven that in ad nauseum, right? You don't need an Xbox. This is an Xbox. That's an Xbox. But those aren't Xboxes, and those aren't the way that people really want to play. You know, despite the fact of what a company wants, right? I'm sure a company like Microsoft would love for people to own nothing and just be totally reliant on streaming their games and paying these huge prices for these games and not being able to do anything with them. I think people got to be smarter than that, right? And buck back against these moves. And I agree 100% with Laura here. She is a smart cookie and knows what's going on and has an inner workings kind of down to a T. And what she's saying definitely rings true, and I think it's a warning to everybody, man. It's crazy that this happens, but let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I'll link this in the description. How do you guys feel about the price increase? How do you feel about what she's saying? How do you feel about Xbox in general, where it's at right now? Let me know. Rack 'em up.